This episode was brought to you by Awesome, AWSM. Awesome makes it possible for consumer brands to reward and motivate their customers with equity ownership. People that have even small amounts of ownership in a brand spend twice as much money per year, are loyal 3 times longer, and are twice as likely to refer their friends and family. Learn more at awesome.com, awsm.com. Okay, welcome everybody. This is Dave Oldham, and today my guest, Rachel Nilsson, founder of Rags. And this is a huge one. This is a special one for me because Rachel was one of the very first people I invited to come on my podcast. And she's so cool so popular and so busy. It's taken us this long to get
it's embarrassing.
Together.
That's embarrassing. That's my bad.
You are super busy, and I'm just so grateful that we were able to pull it off. I think the first time I talked to you about it was like at an e-commerce event at Hell Center Theater. And I told you the name of the podcast, and you're like, "Oh, that's such a cool name. I'll totally come
actually remember that."
And then I've been stalking you via text for like a year.
Dude, squeaky wheel gets the grease. I'm stoked to be here.
It's so cool. And Rachel, I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time because, and I was telling you this, like my wife and my sister-in-law discovered Rags like right when you were getting started. I don't know if it was like through a common friend or how they found out about it, but I remember a couple of my nieces and nephews like had these little jumpers on suddenly, and I'm like, those are cool. Like, where did those come from? And they're like, it's a local company. It's like, her name's Rachel. She's just making these things. It's really cool. And I was like, that was like 10 years ago?
Yeah, dude. It's been 10 years.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking now in my head, like my little nieces and nephews that were wearing them are not like 6 feet tall. Like they're 15,
they're
14,
grandpas.
13. Yeah, well,
that's how it feels.
Yeah.
Well, that was forever ago.
So crazy.
That's cool.
And we were joking about a couple of guys on my team want to get men full-size jumpers.
Oh, I got you.
So
custom.
Yeah, there we
Brand
go.
Sweat and Tears.
Yeah.
Podcast.
Yeah. With the awesome logo on one side, the Brand Sweat and Tears logo on the other side.
As long as you promise to wear that in every podcast.
Oh, if you make me one, I will. I'll work it so hard. The other thing I love about Rachel, well, there's multiple things I love about Rachel. She has been incredible female founder in Utah, has mentored other female founders, is a part of like a crew, which I'm happy to say is growing. And I'm excited to see like the female founder crew, especially in the consumer goods space, that's becoming a thing in Utah. And I love it. I think it's so cool. I've had a bunch of them on, trying to get every one of them on the podcast. And so Rachel's always been super kind and really great to kind of pay it forward. You've had good mentors. We can talk about some of them. And then you've been great to help and mentor others. I recently just had Sadie B, the girls, the sisters on, and they're kind of this next generation, because we're not quite a generation, but like, the little sisters or whatever of like, and they've gotten so much mentorship from a bunch of you girls.
Right.
And my other favorite thing about you is your hair. Those who aren't watching the video are missing out, because Rachel always has the coolest hair. Right now, it's a little like my color, except for this really cool purple tint
you get purple
in the middle, which is awesome. And every time I see you, it's like some cool new color, which is great.
Just walking.
And you're always dressed like a rock star.
Oh, I don't know about that,
but the leather jackets and the boots and the, you look like you're in a band or something, which is
a compliment,
really,
I guess.
I love it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to start, and I know you've told this story like 100 times, but I want to get the origin story of Rags.
Yeah.
And I might jump in and ask you like some crazy
do it.
questions, but let's think about like, I was kind of prepping you ahead of time.
I know.
Think about something that you haven't told people before about the start, the origin story of Rags. And we'll start there, and then I'll just riddle you with lots of questions.
Yeah.
Sound good?
Fun.
Okay.
So I started 10 years, which is insane. I actually didn't realize it had been that long until earlier this month, which is going to be super revealing because we're doing like a 10-year anniversary thing coming up. But it's funny because I didn't even know it was 10 years until like 2 weeks ago.
Really?
So that's how you know, like, wow, you can really be nimble. People think that, it looks like we know what we're doing, but we still are like, oh. But anyway, my little sister sent me a photo of both of so I have 3 boys. My oldest is 15, turning 16, then 13, and then my youngest just barely had a birthday yesterday, and he turned 11.
Nice.
So he was kind of the reason why I started Rags. I wish I had Rags for my other 2, but there was a photo of them standing by a mailbox, and they're just little guys with packages, putting them in the thing, and I took a picture.
First shipments,
dude, and she sent that to me, and I was like, "This is actually insane."
That's crazy.
It's crazy because my kids are so old now, but it feels like time. I'm like still doing the same grind, but then when you really take a moment and you look at that, like a photo like that, it's like, whoa, like these kids were helping me fulfill and pack orders and put them in a mailbox, you know? So that was kind of cool. But I started, 10 years, my youngest was almost 1. And I had like back in the day, even in high school, junior high, I've always been kind of artistic and I've always kind of worn, like made my own things, right? And so I learned how to
teach yourself how to sew and stuff.
You know how they make you take those like sewing classes in junior high? Like turns out that thing panned out for me.
Boom.
Yeah.
Dude, have you ever reached out to like your home teacher and be like, thank you?
Yes. And they probably were like, you were the last person. Like I would hide under the desks and press people's presser foots on their sewing machine when they'd turn them on and not know I was under there. Their needle would be like, grrr. Like I was a nut.
Just having fun in class.
Totally. But my mom also was like, she sewed. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. So I grew up with my mom sewing our clothes and like making crafts. And my dad was a musician. So he was into music. He ended up.
That's where the rock star thing.
Growing. There you go. So I'm a good combo of both, I guess.
Great.
But I started early on in junior high sewing my own stuff. High school, I did adult fashion and I would like walk into local skate shops, or if you're from Utah, JMR is it was like, it's kind of like a boutique-y Urban Outfitters, I would say, or like in between that and Anthro or Free People. And I was wearing stuff that I'd made, and the buyer happened to be there, one of the owners, and he was like, "Where'd you get that?" And I told him I made it. So I started selling clothes through them.
When you were a teenager?
Yeah, it was cool. I was playing soccer. I got a soccer scholarship to UVU here. And between like sewing shirts and soccer, it was so crazy. And the downside and maybe upside of me is if it's not fun, I'm like, meh, like I'm out. So I ended up not doing that for, a long time because it wasn't that they weren't selling. They actually were doing really well. I was just I was behind a sewing machine all day. And so fast forward, I got married. We had our 3 kids. My husband at the time was going through law school. My youngest was a Wrigley toddler, and I hated the baby clothes. And we also were like really, really, really poor. We were living on student loans, and I want to say we were getting like $15,000 a year. No joke. Okay. So like, how does a family of 5?
Yeah,
it was actually insane.
Wow.
And so law school is almost done, about to take the bar. I was feeling this major pressure, like, what are we going to do financially? This is when it gets real. And so I started selling my kids, I would make them clothes as they were my other boys, like as they were growing up. And I started selling that. I started Instagram and selling their hand-me-downs on my Instagram.
So it was just hand-me-downs?
Just hand-me-downs.
Stuff that you had made, or both,
some of it,
some purchase.
Yeah. So some of the stuff that I'd made, and I noticed once when I was doing that people were buying the stuff that I'd made, and they were buying it for a lot more money, and it kind of dawned on me one night where I was
the first
like,
thing that you made?
Oh, I was making like little hoodies with sewn on, like not patches, but I would cut out my own.
Skull
like I would screen print on fabric, and then cut those out and sew those patches on. Okay. So it was kind of like a fun, and then or I would custom tailor it. So it was like, actually thrift is huge now. Yeah. And I was doing thrift back in the day, but I would get shirts that were way too big and I would sew them down to fit me, So stuff like that, but for my kids. Yeah. And
the jumper wasn't the first thing. You'd made a ton of other stuff.
No, yeah, it was just random, but it was kind of cool because it was simultaneous. I was selling through Instagram, and it was at the time when my 1-year-old was super wriggly. I wanted something cool for him, but I loved the functionality of a one piece. So I grabbed a t-shirt out of the closet, cut it up, sewed a one piece, put it on, took a picture, put it on my Instagram, and immediately I saw that people were stoked on it. And I had remembered, this is like what happened with your adult stuff and you got burned out. So also part of the burnout was like back in the day, nobody really shopped online. You had to walk into a store. And so when I was selling to a store, I had to give up half my margin.
Yeah.
It sucked.
Yeah.
So this time I was like, first of all, if this thing is great and people want it, it turns out there's like a bigger problem here and people are in my same boat. They want something plain that's cool, that's functional. I'm proud of putting my kid in, but it's easy to change diapers.
Yeah, super
whatever.
Easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it like dawned on me one night where I was like, dude, I could totally sell these through social media and it's direct to consumer and I get all the money. Like that was a new concept, nobody really was shopping online.
Yeah.
Like we would get magazines and put in an envelope with a check. Do you remember that with like our order? How crazy is that?
Yeah, I remember
that happened. So
like earmark, dog ear, like the Sears catalog pages for my mom, and be like, "Hey, I want this."
Yes, totally.
And even J. Crew and like some of those brands,
all
like,
of them,
just bought out of catalogs.
Yeah, you buy out of a catalog,
or you just go to a store,
or you'd walk in.
Yeah,
that was like all you did.
Yeah.
So this was just it was like, whoa, fast forward 10 years and so much changes, right? So I woke up that next morning and I got things set up and I posted about it and people were super stoked and I started selling. I did like one drop and it sold out in 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
So yeah, so I was like, this is like actually a real thing.
Wow.
So slowly but surely I started
How many followers did you have at that point?
Somebody asked me that the other day and I don't think it was a lot. I think it was under 1,000. Maybe it might have been like 3,000 because I had been selling hand-me-downs. And at that point I started getting like a little bit of momentum, just through like hand-me-down clothes.
Yeah.
And then,
so how big was the drop that sold out?
Oh, it was as much as I could make. So at the time,
100 or something.
The first drop I did, I remember I sold $1,000 in a day.
Wow.
And I was tired. Then the second drop I did, it was like $2,000. So it was like, wow. And it was painfully selling out.
Yeah. So
immediately I jumped in and got a website because I was like sending PayPal invoices to people. Once they'd pay it, I would get a label and ship them.
Yeah.
Hence the photo of my boys, like putting them in the
standing by the mailbox.
Yeah. Yeah. So, fast forward, I ended up I was like, I can't do that anymore. This is insane. So I built a little website. It was kind of like, I can't remember what it was called, but it wasn't Shopify. We're on Shopify now. But basically it was like a blog template, literally, and drag and drop the photos in and then had the cart all built and it was super cheap. It was like $20. So I ended up doing that and sold out almost every time I would drop stuff. And it probably wasn't a ton of quantities, but keep in mind, I was like hand sewing this crap. Yeah. And then I was also a full-time mom, like pretty much single mom because my husband's in school, studying. So I would wake up, be with my kids throughout the day. I would like screenshot influencers on Instagram because Instagram was kind of wild, wild west back then.
Yeah.
I would screenshot them and then I would put, the influencers I wanted to send rags to. And then I would put my kids to bed and go sit on the couch and just email, 30 people a night. And maybe 2 would come back and be like, sure, because I was new.
Yeah.
And then,
just doing a ton of cold outreach to these influencers.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, and then as, you grow, more and more people just want to be a part of it. Yeah. And then, and I didn't have a photographer. I had nothing. I was using only my cell phone. So a lot of that was great because they would send me photos and that's seriously what I would use.
Yeah.
A lot of UGC.
Yeah.
About like 8 months in, my nanny showed up to my house and was like, Rach, Shark Tank's in town. You should go try. And I was like, dude, whatever, But I knew I had great numbers. Yeah. And the story's cool. It's like legit. I was literally on food stamps, you name it. I remember returning a pair of sandals to Target for $7. No lie.
Wow.
And the lady was looking at me like, you're freaking nuts. Like, bless your heart, I'll slip you $10. Like, head home.
You need $7 that bad.
Head home, Mom.
I'll add 10.
It was brutal. So I was like, cool. I called my accountant, and on my drive up, I shoved like a couple rags in my bag. Drove up there.
Where was the audition at?
It was in Salt Lake.
Okay.
At like Salt Lake Community College or something random, you know. Drove up there. There was a massive line. So I went and talked to one of the producers with like a headset on. I was like, hey, how long? Because time is so important.
Yeah.
I was like a ton of it.
Hey, I got stuff to do. Like, how long is this going to be?
I'm like, dealing with real life. I'm doing all these things. So he was like, there's like 300 people in front of you. We'll probably plow through these. Wow. There was 10 producers there, I think, and each person got like 4 minutes with one producer, and then it was like churning them in and out, Yeah. So he's like, if you come back in a couple hours, here's your ticket.
Okay, you could hold your place in line and then come back.
So like, so which is so funny looking back now, because I just was like, whatever. And come back, and the parking lot's empty. Nobody's there. And I'm like, dude,
oh no, I
park at the very front. And I see the same dude that told me to come back in a couple hours running out the door like, hey, we were way ahead of schedule. Like, but the producers are packing up. They're all in one room and they're eating lunch. And I was like, okay. And he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. Like, I'll pitch. He's like, are you prepared? And I was like, sure. I had no clue what I was not.
You're just winging it.
Which actually kind of I love, because people, it just immediately is comfortable, it's genuine. And I relied on my story because it's very real. It's so easy to talk about,
Yeah.
So
it might have been the perfect way to do it.
Right. So I poked my head in and was like, hey, I'm Rachel. I'm with Rags. And they're like, can
what color was your hair?
I think at the time for real it was blue.
Because I mean, in a weird way, they're like, they remembered you.
Oh, totally. And same with the guy with the headset was like, boom, I remember hair, like it's the freaking hair. It's like a blessing and a curse. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up like, they were like, can we help you? And I told them, and I was like, they were like, well, we're packing up. And I was like, well, do you guys care if I just pitch to all of you? And they were like, sure. Mm-hmm. And ended up getting like some time with them, and they were super stoked on the product, loved the story, called me back the next day. Huge long process, but ended up going on Shark Tank, which was so cool for the brand. And then after that,
what year was that?
Dude, I don't even know.
Do you remember?
I honestly, that's embarrassing. I have no idea. I want to say 2016, but I don't know.
Okay, so almost like 8 years ago. Yeah.
2007. Oh, I think it aired in 2016. We filmed 2018. Takes forever. That crap is
like filmed in 2016 and then aired later.
We filmed in 2000. We aired. So I filmed at the end of the summer,
like a year
2015,
later or even more.
No, and then it aired like that February.
Okay.
So 2016, and went out there, did it all. I actually knew it was gonna air. I was like, dude, that episode was money. Like I was in there for 2 hours negotiating, and it's entertaining. In fact, like before I flew out there, the producer, the whole Shark Tank story is so insane. It was really lucky that I got on.
Yeah.
Because they were like, she's a wild card.
Yeah.
We don't know what, like she could either be so awesome or fully flop.
Yeah.
And half of the producers
either way, it's great TV.
Right. It's like entertaining, and I kind of knew that.
Yeah.
So it was like, either way, this
like
is
you were
like
just confident, like I'm on.
Dude, I actually wasn't, but I was like, you guys it's kind of a Hail Mary. And my producer that was kind of navigating this whole thing was saying like, Rach, this is full on Hail Mary. Mm-hmm. The main guy is not sure, but you have a fan that's like one of the top 10 producers at NBC that freaking loves Rags.
Okay.
So I had to pitch in front of it. It's just a grueling process.
Yeah.
Luckily, the half that thought I'd be great won. And I got on. We did our whole thing. I was in there for 2 hours negotiating. It was hilarious. In fact, at the end, they tell you to turn around, walk out just to get the shot. And they were like, whoa, you can't leave. You got to come up here and shake all of our hands. That was so great.
That's cool.
So I ended up got to hang out with
the Sharks on that episode?
It was Lori, Kevin O'Leary, Damon.
Was Cuban there?
Cuban and Robert.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was like the...
Yeah, dude. It was OG. Like, it was crazy. That was great.
Who did you get a deal with?
I got 3 offers. I ended up going with Robert. Mm-hmm. And I didn't like after all of that happened, we did our due diligence. I didn't actually do it.
Okay.
But it was great for rags. Like we had amazing exposure.
The publicity. Yeah.
It actually, I think I won like top 10 best Shark Tank pitches in Forbes and it's like, that's actually hilarious.
Nice.
Because these fools were like, we may or may not use her. And we keep getting re-aired probably because it's so unassuming. It's just like unassuming. The story is for reals. It's like, this is a genuine mom who didn't go to business school for this, came up with a product that was a need out of passion and like made it work.
Yeah,
you know,
it's so cool. Story.
Yeah, she didn't need any money. Like I literally used hand-me-down clothing to fold that money into this now business, you know? So it's cool.
It's like the ultimate lean startup.
Right. Yeah. And it was like very real, you know? So after that, Nordstrom had reached out, Disney reached out. I actually said no to those and reached back out after years when I was like, hey, we're ready to take something like that on.
So why did you say no at the first go?
We just weren't ready.
Too overwhelmed.
And I knew that if you were going to go that route, you needed to make sure that you nailed it.
Right.
Yeah. And you have one shot. And
okay, can I ask you a personal question?
Yeah.
In retrospect, do you feel like you were just too afraid, or do you still feel like that was totally the
No,
right decision?
I was 0% scared, actually. It was like...
But how did you have the maturity and the knowledge to not just jump at Disney at the first chance? Like,
I know.
How did you no, I'm not quite ready yet. If it wasn't fear, like how did you have that intuition, or how did you know that?
I mean, I think Disney's a good example of like, of course, immediately I was like, this can't be real. Mm-hmm. Like, is that email for reals?
Yeah.
Like, that's Disney.
Yeah.
You know, you immediately think it's like spam.
Yeah, yeah.
But obviously you take the call, and they were so stoked on rags, and we have built this unbelievable community, which I know you and I touched on that before we started recording. But that was kind of like a secondary thing about the brand that I really didn't expect. Mm-hmm. Where rags were like selling used for way more than what we were selling them new. Like I've seen some go for like $800.
Wow. Okay, we're going to circle back to that.
We can circle back to that. Yeah. But so Disney, you know, they were very aware, and they were seeing this up and coming cool brand. And so I kind of relied on that, you know, where I dug in, I realized like what that would take, which is a beast. It's basically, you know, you do your research. You're like, can I bring a team on? I really at the time couldn't even service my current demand that was direct to consumer.
You're like, how am I going to make the leap to like take care of the Disney demand?
Totally. Like it was way too big of a leap, but I knew like keep this relationship warm, send Disney rags.
Mad props to you on that because I mean, 9 out of 10 of us, and I'm including myself in that. I mean, Disney, I'd be like, I would be jumping at that. Right?
Yeah.
I'd probably just be like, throw caution to the wind. And the problem is I've heard stories and talking to other founders that they did that and it crushed them.
Yeah.
Right? Like so it's so cool that you kind of had the confidence and the maturity, the wisdom to be like, I love this. Thank you for the interest, but I'm not quite ready. And then I'll get back to you. I'll circle back to you. Right?
Yeah. I think that's where you have to be really disciplined in brand and be really like confident and you have to be able to look like you can't be so nearsighted, and it's really hard not to be.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where like the Shark Tank instance is super, super cool, and I had 2 attorneys sitting down with me and saying not to do it, but my gut is like, do it. Who cares?
Yeah.
You know, Disney, it's like, yeah, do it, but you have to really look at that and be like, do I want a relationship with Disney for 6 months and have that peter out?
Yeah.
Or do I want something that's like more long term that can be like really cool for the brand, you know? And I think that was like an important thing for me to learn early on. I remember listening to a podcast actually with Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. Freaking love him.
Yeah.
And he went through a really tough time in his business where he had to say no, and he had to lean down, and he had to do really hard things, which
to stay true to the brand.
A lot of people, I think right now are doing the same thing, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But his whole mindset, and I think this is important when you're starting anything that can mean something, is what do you want that to look like in 100 years? And for Yvon Chouinard, it was really important that he had a brand that lasted 100 years. And that resonated. It's like these opportunities will not go away if you can stay really disciplined in your brand. And you can stay really, like, you want good, responsible, disciplined growth. And And that ended up being the case. Both. Like Nordstrom actually gave me a $500,000 PO that I declined. Wow. It would have meant a lot at the time. Trust me.
Hard to say no to that.
A lot of money, like for a startup, you know? But I knew, like, first of all, Nordstrom is such a beast that they would control my consumer. And I didn't even know at the time who my consumer really was.
Yeah.
It was going so fast and there were so many people jumping in that I was like, I need to take like 10 steps back and like get to know my consumer. And I explained that to Nordstrom when I declined because I didn't want to offend them. And I knew at some point that relationship would happen.
Yeah.
But I think that was actually really made them more impressed.
I'm thinking in the back of my head, they're probably like, holy crap, she's legit.
Yeah.
And we want to work with her even more.
It's weird. It's like there's really, as lame as that is, because it has to be very authentic.
Hard to get. I mean, authentic, but hard to get.
Right. But it's like, hey, no, we're going to like, I
know what I'm about. And this will make sense, but just not right now.
And eventually they can be eating out of the palm of your hand. And that's how you want to be. With these big, massive corporations, they could easily come in and control your brand or how that looks forever.
Yeah.
Because you've leveraged your business to where they're 90% of it.
Yeah. And no direct criticism of them.
Not at all.
They've got so much stuff.
Absolutely.
The second that you're not selling, that you're cast aside in that kind of a relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you want to have more of a partnership where they value you as much as you value them. It's not this huge lopsided thing, right?
And interesting because
you
hindsight,
played it so well. That's
I don't know, but I'm looking back now and it's like, COVID happens, right? And Nordstrom, they're so great, but they experienced a big crash because, they had to close stores. There was no foot traffic. Like it was really hard for everybody.
Yeah.
And the first thing they did was they went out to their vendors and shut off all POs.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, dude, it is a good thing that is such a small percentage of our business because that would have fully crushed us.
Yeah.
So it's just weird decisions like that where, it's important to keep those relationships warm and be confident and take calculated risk because you wouldn't go anywhere if it wasn't scary or anything wasn't like there's so many times that I've jumped off that cliff and not known what was in store and just figured it out as you go.
Well, back then, did you have anybody that was mentoring you? Did you have people that you were bouncing ideas off of or not yet?
Dude, yeah, kind of, but not really. You know, it was a little bit unsettling because a lot of that was gut.
Yeah.
And still is, which it's all come full circle to be like, whoa, like your gut instincts, you know, I would say, I think some of my hardest lessons learned were not listening to gut and allowing people to come in that you think are these very experienced, whatever, with this crazy rap sheet, but I eventually surrounded myself with like really great investors and smart people that had built brands, which is important, that
we'll circle back to that too.
Yeah,
I'll give a shout out to a few of them.
There you go. That I think I was really lucky to be in their circle, but it took like some gut and instinct and just being really thoughtful.
Okay, so you pass on Disney, pass on Nordstrom. You're focusing on just trying to build and it was mostly driven by social media still?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
The social media and you had built kind of an army of influencers through this just kind of cold outreach. Yep. At what point did the influencers start reaching out to you?
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember after. I think seriously after Shark Tank, a lot changed. Not everybody's like fortunate enough to get that kind of exposure that quickly, But I would say that was probably when we really didn't have to do any outreach. And Rag still to this day has never paid an influencer. Like because of brand and because of product, like we're very confident in our product and we want to make sure it's aligned. We haven't really had to go that route. But
so how have you rewarded the influencers?
We just launched an affiliate program, which is interesting because you were just talking to me about this business that you're doing. And it's very similar, because again, like over the years, times have changed and people where Instagram, when we started, was very different. I think now if you were to go that route, you could never expect to not pay somebody. You got to like.
Well, now, I mean, it's influencers are like demanding a huge chunk up front.
Right.
It's just even like pay to play kind of stuff.
Right.
But in the early days, so you were just giving them product and that was it?
Yeah. And then, because I didn't have a photographer, we were sharing them too. So it was kind of a win-win. It's like
helping them grow
grow your audience while I'm growing mine.
Okay.
And it wasn't pay to play. So everybody was seeing.
Oh, those were the good old days.
The good old days. It was like Wild Wild West, man. Put me back in those days. Yeah, it was cool. It was, it's so different.
Yeah.
Which just makes it a little bit more tricky to go that route. But yeah, that was like initially, we got picked up by Huffington Post for like top 15 coolest kid brands in America. I didn't even know about it. And people
after Shark Tank?
Yeah, no, it was before.
Oh, before?
This is before.
Okay.
And Vogue was the same, like top 20.
And they just found you?
Yeah, dude, because of social media and because I got it in the right hands, And I remember even in those days being like, dude, I'm not making any gains, but I'm just going to keep doing this because that is like where it's going to start to snowball.
Driving the growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was smart.
Yeah.
One of the guys on my team asked me because we were playing around on the website earlier because he was looking for an adult jumpsuit. He wants an adult jumper. So we got to do that. Well, for men, I know you do it for women. He wants a male jumper. But rags.com, has it always been rags.com? I couldn't remember. Okay.
That's actually crazy
was the first
story.
Website?
Talk about community. That was a part of
Let's talk about it.
So the first website, my name's Rachel. So it was rags2raches.com.
Oh yeah, that's what I remember. I was like, I'm pretty sure it wasn't rags.com, but I couldn't remember. That's right, your name. Okay.
Yeah. So this was like years ago. I was like 3 years in, maybe 2 years in.
Yeah.
And rags.com was available, but dude, a 4-letter U.
Very expensive.
Ridiculous. So I was actually like talking about it, looking into it, knew that it was a grip of money. And oddly enough, somebody had reached out that weekend on LinkedIn. And he was like, hey, this is random, but I'm a broker for websites. I just got offered rags.com. And my wife is like a mega fan of yours.
Really?
And he was like, we're in California. I would be happy to buy that at a deal, like cost, and just turn it over into you.
To support the cause. Support the cost.
Cause. So did it that weekend. Like it was literally a Friday that we were talking about it. Saturday I got hit up. We had rags.com on Monday.
Oh, so cool.
And then I flew out there, met his wife, let his kid be like in a photo shoot. Cause that was such a huge deal. Like that was so nice.
Initiated that. And
even if he made some on top, it was still such a break for me that it was like, cool.
How much money did you save over like what the published price was?
Oh, thousands. Like, could like 6 figures.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was meaningful.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a cool story.
Yeah.
Okay. So rags.com, how early in the process did you start thinking about brand? I mean, originally it was I got to sell stuff to survive. Right. But at some point when it started to become real and you're like, ooh, okay, this is something, this is growing. How did you start thinking about brand and what did you want the brand to mean?
Right. That's a really good question. I think for me, it was incredibly instinctual because it was so much a part of me and it kind of still is that made it really easy.
Yeah. You do have this super duper coolness factor.
I don't know about
the brand
that.
Being an extension of the founder.
Right.
Like for you, I feel that because I know you. I know we're not like besties.
Right.
I'm just a secret admirer. But I've seen you over the years.
Yeah.
And I've seen how it is an extension of kind of your own personality, uniqueness, coolness, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I've been curious about how intentional, how methodical that was.
So I guess for me, it was really important to understand who do I want wearing rags at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. And of course you want the whole world, but when you're beginning, it needs to be this like subset that you can focus on, and that was where I focused on getting the rags too, was in the hands of people that I thought were kind of like a reflection of myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Where they would represent the brand really well. They have this unique style that is just cool.
Yeah.
And then you grow off of that. And you see that happen like Supreme, dude. Great example.
Yeah.
You know, they have a red box logo on a white t-shirt and people are paying a grip.
Crazy.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it all comes down to really understanding your customer, understanding who do you want your customer to be? What does that look like? Do not overcomplicate it, and then just build from there, you know, but stay insanely disciplined. And we haven't been great at that. Like there have been
sometimes you make mistakes.
Absolutely. A million. Yes. But I think in the beginning it was really as simple as that. And then, you know, I look back and we still have them on our Instagram at some of the crap I posted. Like, how do I what in the world? Yeah. But I think it all stems from people can like feel the authenticity. People can like, that's the beauty of where we're like what we're living in nowadays. You know, you don't have to be this like curated, perfected thing.
Yeah.
We'd never start if we had to do that.
Yeah.
It's like people are way more like, it's so much more appealing to have a human being behind and even to have it look like a human being is doing it. It's not some curated bullcrap.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that.
Yeah.
And as you had that discipline in the beginning and you were pretty picky and methodical about who you wanted to represent it, how did you think about interactions with customers? How did you continue to build that community? Like what strategic and tactical things did you do to really build a community?
Right.
It was more about, it was not just about buying clothing. It was like, there's something to this. And you alluded to this earlier, so I'll bring it up now. It's some people buy secondhand rags for like crazy amounts of money because you've built like the supreme, like you've built a brand. It's not just, you know, a jumper or a shirt or a whatever. Like it's worth something because of the brand that you built.
Yeah. I mean, that honestly came secondary. Like I did not expect that. There's so many pieces to this that were secondary to what my initial goal was. Right. And my initial goal, honestly, was to create a piece of clothing that was easy and functional for me to be able to put on my kid.
Yeah. Solve your own problem.
And then second, it was like, cool, I could actually sell these.
Yeah.
And make money.
But because of who you are, you're like, in the process of selling these things, I'm not going to compromise my standards and who I am and what this stands for. I'm not just going to try and sell stuff. I'm going to be true to who I am and who I want this brand to be.
Right. And I think that was like the community piece came as people start buying and they start sharing and they start to, then you have to start figuring that piece out. Like, how do you want this experience to be?
Yeah. How did you enable that? How did you
totally
fan the
and it
things?
actually was pretty thought through looking back, and we still have the same model where I realized that there was, even early on before I even had a website, things were selling out really fast. Right. And there was like almost this adrenaline with these women of the ones that would score were like, hell yeah. Like, you know, like
a limited drop.
You snooze, you lose, you know, and it was really easy for me to be able to market and get people to my website because it was always fresh and new. Right. So it was kind of a twofer. It was like they're building.
In the beginning, everything you were doing was a limited drop, basically.
Because I only had remnant fabric.
Yeah.
And I could only literally make so much of that fabric. I went to the LA like fashion district and literally bought remnant rolls of fabric from bigger brands.
So you ran out, there was no more?
And I couldn't, even if I wanted to make more. And trust me, there was so many times I was like, that's painful.
I know, but it worked in your favor. Again, it was a strategy that's like the limited edition, limited supply, limited number drove this crazy kind of FOMO. And, I got to get one before they disappear.
Totally. So I think that was what kind of drove the community and the chatter and the growth. But then I also was incredibly confident in the product.
Yeah.
And people were coming back and buying more. And they felt like it was such good quality that they could go and resell it once their kid. Like, who doesn't love that, you know? Yeah. And there was this market of people that were doing exactly what I was doing. They were selling hand-me-downs.
Yeah.
And they started building out these like rags branded hand-me-down buy-sell trade groups is what they call them. You know, so that was like a interesting but great discovery. And then honing in on that and really understanding, I think great brands are brands that are having you buy out of like an emotion. There's some sort of like higher thing happening. And for us, it kind of was something, I'm like an adrenaline junkie. Like in my free time, I love like bombing down a hill on my mountain bike or snowboarding, or it's really an addiction.
Yeah.
It's like, and I found that a lot of women, like you talk to them and it's like, they love Black Friday and they will wait in that freaking line because it's an adrenaline.
The rush.
It's a rush.
Yeah.
And like, they don't get very many opportunities to go out and have a rush like that. And so how can we turn a shopping experience into some sort of rush?
Interesting.
And that becomes like addicting. People were like, I'm going to be in labor at drop time. Can someone hop on and buy? Or we've had people pay other people to go
be there. And I'm going to have my baby in line. I don't care.
Totally. So it really became like honing in on what's making these people tick. And I think that the experience was a big part of it.
Yeah, that's cool. And I mean, sounds like part of it was out of necessity and then part of it was a strategy and it worked together.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the beginning, you were a team of one.
Mm-hmm.
And at what point did you transition from I'm sewing every single one of these to like having it manufactured? And what was the emotional, like, okay, I'm turning this thing over to get manufactured by somebody else. And were you nervous about like maintaining the quality?
Oh, that part. Yeah. That is gnarly anxiety.
Yeah.
Rarely do people get it right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know what I'm doing.
And you had handmade every single one of these.
Dude, yeah. I didn't even have a pattern. I didn't have a real pattern. So how do you give a manufacturer something? It's like, dude, I don't even have a measurement.
Okay. So what did you do?
So I asked around and I got contacts to help make a pattern and to help make, they're called markers that you have to send into your manufacturer. They roll over these stacks of
How did you pick your first manufacturer?
I found out through a friend of a friend who was willing to help. It's like paying it forward, man.
Yeah.
And those types of relationships are really valuable to people like myself. Their manufacturers are.
Was that first manufacturer really good, or were you like, oh no, that was terrible?
Just kidding. They actually were great for what I needed at the time.
Yeah.
So,
but you quickly outgrew them.
Yeah, and the quality wasn't quite there, and I realized the anxiety every time I go was like through the roof because there was always something wrong.
Yeah.
So we eventually moved, but in the beginning, because of prior, I knew I was no good behind a sewing machine and I would burn out super fast. So that was actually the first thing. Most people probably wouldn't do that. They would keep making it. And then over time, first thing I did was try to find a factory because I knew I would burn out because of my prior experience. Yeah. Second thing I did was customer service and shipping. It was like, I'm no good behind the computer, but that was really scary to do too, but it almost was like, once you do that, immediately our revenues increased because I was starting to be able to hone in more on like what I knew I was good at. And that was like design, brand,
customer, like engagement on the high level.
Yeah. Community.
Like fans. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you figured out how to start outsourcing this, worked through some of the growing pains there, grow and improved over time. And to this day, your current manufacturing situation, do you have multiple manufacturers, a single manufacturer? Is it all overseas? Is there some done here in the US? Like, how did that evolve?
Yeah, I mean, we were US for a long time, and that's great because the turnaround times are way quicker.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I feel like we've kind of run that out of our country. We're not great at it. Yeah. And sadly, seriously, because when we were doing it, we were just doing it out of LA. It was so great. Yeah. And it was so quick. And it's so cool to be able to have a 2-hour flight and go see the difference you're making in these people's lives, so cool. And so we eventually took it overseas, and that was because we had to find a factory that was Disney approved. We ended up, getting the deal with Disney later on. We needed to find a factory that was Disney approved that would be able to do Nordstrom. And there's a ton of guidelines that you have to be, they're constantly checking, which they have to. And we found a really great partner in India. We split and did half of our manufacturing in China at one point. That ended up being kind of a joke. So we came back and we just have our factory now. It's like, he always calls me the mother because we have 90% of his business.
Wow. Okay.
So cool.
Yeah.
So we have a good partner, and then we'll source little things here and there, but most of it is out of there. Yeah.
You need to talk Disney into bringing it back to the US and like making it. They have so much money.
In the world.
They could do it just to like be cool.
I know.
Just to do the right thing and create jobs in America or whatever.
Yep.
and or when you become a billionaire, then you can do it, right?
Well, that's
just
right.
create like
we'll put that
near shore,
we'll
on shore. Okay.
But you know what's so cool? Like, because we were getting stuff made in India, but then we're also shipping it here, and we have screen printers here that are taking the rags and they're still screen printing, and I remember being in India and being so overwhelmed by, like, I rolled up and there's this cute little family with like a red carpet for reals going into the factory.
Wow.
People that were sewing didn't have shoes on, and I was like, why aren't they wearing shoes? And he was like, because this is like a place of worship.
Wow.
Like, we're so lucky to have employment, and we actually pay these people more than most
like
people
an average.
get.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Like you would think that we're getting like a screaming deal on cost. I would say that's probably like the hardest thing still with rags is we're paying a premium still, but it's important. And then seeing all the people here, just even locally, where it's like, whoa, this is like impacted people's lives. First, my employees, you know, where I was like, hiring people is so scary, but then you get to a point where it's like, cool, I want to watch you buy your first house.
Yeah.
And like to be able to see that with multiple people within like this small little nugget of the world.
Yeah.
And have it like impacting lives like that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about team. Who were your first hires and how did you think about building a team?
Friends, family.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're like, don't do that. But ended up, they're so great, you know? And
so you'd say for you, it worked out really well.
Yeah. But you just have to be able to have hard conversations and have this unbelievable trust that no matter what, you're going to stay homies or you're going to be, you know, I think that's a strong suit of mine is I don't like burn bridges. And
you kind of have this talent that I've even seen. I've maybe even personally experienced it a little bit just trying to get you on the podcast. You're a super straight shooter, but it never comes across like offensive.
Right.
And so maybe
that's
you have
a
this
compliment.
kind of
Thank you.
magical talent with family to be like super straight, but they never felt like you were attacking them personally.
No.
Like they didn't feel anger. They just felt like, oh, okay, I need to do this, or I need to be better at this, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, life's too short.
Yeah.
And I prefer that. Yeah. I prefer a straight shooter. I actually think that those people are like better than those that will beat around the bush.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, dude, you're saving us both time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the book Radical Candor. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Anybody that brings up books, it's so embarrassing.
Yeah,
but I probably need to read it.
Well, I don't read anymore, so I probably can't even read anymore, but I just listen to everything on Audible.
Yep.
So just driving around, I'm listening to books, but it's actually really great. But it makes this point of like, it is much better for both people to be super straight. But the trick is that you've got to care about the person.
Yeah.
They can't be an object to you. Otherwise they feel like, trash.
Yeah.
But you can be very, very direct and very transparent. And so it's cool. And I've, tried to implement that. Yeah. I'm not as good at it as you are.
It's hard.
I'm a little nervous about like hurting people's feelings.
I think everybody is.
Out how to be good at that.
Yeah. But I'm not the best either. Like if we're talking team, obviously, at some point you have to hire people from outside of your organization, and then the thing will grow bigger than the people that you originally hired and whatever. And you're having these difficult conversations. Yeah. And I think when you're getting into some sort of business and you're growing, you have to just accept that you're going to have uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
90% of your day is uncomfortable conversations. Yeah. And so it's important to like build rapport and like have this trust.
Yeah.
And I appreciate when people are like that with me. And I think I live my life feeling like giving people benefit of the doubt is just such a good way to live.
Yeah.
Even if they suck. It's like, well, I'll try to come up with why they don't suck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because it's just a better way to be, Yeah. So I think inevitably you grow and you get people on your team. And I have made some mega misses in hiring, and team is really hard, to find the right people.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did you grow? Okay, you got friends and family first, but then how did you grow beyond that?
A lot of it was network and then building a brand. People understand what it is. And it's so interesting, and it still is this way. Mm-hmm. And I totally believe in this. It's like, random things and people really truly do fall into your lap at the right time at the right place. And sometimes you don't understand that. And even if it was the greatest mistake of your life hiring them, hindsight's always 20/20, and you can look back and be like, dude, that was so insane how that all panned out. So I feel very fortunate because I was lucky to know a lot of people, and then bringing in the investor investors that I did, that was kind of the value for me. It wasn't the money necessarily. It was their connections and their network.
Yeah.
And then building a brand, people want to be a part of something cool.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah.
How many employees do you have now?
So we actually have a lot of, my business has shifted so much where we can dig into this more if you wanted to, but it's all kind of come full circle where I had to step away from rags and I allowed somebody to come in. I stepped away. I'm now very much in the weeds, but
for a while
because for
out.
personal reasons, and I had stuff going on with my family. I went through a crazy divorce. It was super sucky. 3 boys. I knew that I needed to be more hands on deck with them.
Yeah.
So I hired somebody to come in and help run the day to day and just be in the weeds. That ended up not being great. Again, this goes back to gut instinct, right? You think, okay, this person comes from somewhere that is way bigger than rags.
Yeah.
They've seen massive scale.
Yeah.
They're going to come in and know how to do it way better than me.
So you're saying like, even in the beginning with this hire, it felt logical in your head, but did your gut, were you kind of like, I don't think this is good? And then it got confirmed later?
Right. This particular moment was kind of, again, out of a necessity because I knew the bigger, better deal was being at home with my boys.
Yeah.
So it was like, I got to get somebody in here, So it's like, I could have said, yeah, I didn't feel right about it, but I wasn't feeling right about anything at that point. It was kind of like, whoa, my world just got completely rocked.
Yeah.
We got to like all hands on deck over here.
Yeah.
But as the time went on, I think it saved rags from a big problem because of my gut, coming back and really assessing and being like, this is probably not going well. I need to like do forensics on the business and see what's going on. So had to have a bit of a reset. So now I have 4 full-time, we're small, and hired out a bunch of contractors to do the rest.
Wow.
Which I dig it.
Yeah.
It is a lot more work, but it's like I have more control. I feel like I'm back where I was, where I have control over what's going on, who my consumer is, the brand, the design, and I remember being at a conference and we had a team, I think it was like 35 of us, and I was miserable. I was like, I remember actually calling Jeremy Andrus. He's really great friend. He is the CEO of Traeger. He came from Skull Candy, grew and built these companies, made them go public, whatever. And I remember being like, dude, like what the freak? Because we grew so fast. I had all these employees. And I was like, please tell me this is getting better because I'm just managing adult kids all day.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how it felt. And it's so not my jam. Yeah. It's like, this is not fun for me.
Yeah.
And he was like, get used to that. That's like 90% of your gig.
Yeah.
And I think what's been so cool about lately is really honing in on like, all right, if I want a brand and if I want to be doing something I'm passionate about for 100 years, you have got to get like in it and passionate and do like what you were doing from, from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I've done it. And it is insane.
But how did you go from like 35 or 36 people back?
Oh, dude, it's
like
brutal.
4 or 5?
Way harder to do that. Way harder to do that than to hire and bring people.
Because I'm sure not everyone was like, oh, good riddance. I mean,
no. It was painful.
So hard.
No, I think it's all painful.
Yeah.
Even because I think it's actual bullcrap when people are like, oh, I love firing people and they think they're so powerful. I've heard that come out of people. I've heard that come out of people's mouths.
Really?
Yes. Where I'm like, dude, that is like the worst thing on the planet. So
I've only had joy in like a handful of hires.
Yeah.
And it was joy not in the, it was like,
just
they're miserable, we're miserable.
Yeah.
It's like
call spade a spade.
Yeah, it's just like bad. But there have been more that were so hard because, didn't want to let, those people go.
Brutal.
It's so hard.
Brutal. Yeah. I think there were some that were like that, where it's like, dude, let me help you find your next move. Cause you are like at the top of where you're going to be at Rags. That happened actually quite a bit.
Yeah.
Where, and I actually was stoked to be a part of that resume.
Yeah, for your personal growth.
Yeah,
you need to move on, and I'll try to help you find the coolest thing.
Yeah, so many times that did happen where it was like, dude, because you were at Rags, you were able to go now and get this job that it wasn't the best fit here, but you're thriving, you're crushing.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I just did a podcast not too long ago, I was telling you, and I would say part of the surrender and being able to like take stuff back on and like gritty and grinding is almost harder than saying no to Nordstrom. Or, it's like, but I think long term, it's so energizing. And I actually think a lot of CEOs, Jeremy being one of them, he's gone through the same thing similarly, where it's like, we got to be really smart on, it's the same with Rags, the same with any company. Like, we got to be really smart on where we're like infusing our time and energy. And I
remember hearing him on a podcast recently where he was talking about coming into Traeger and how it was pretty tough. It was pretty brutal that he had to do like a pretty big reset. And those are always tough.
So it's cool to talk to somebody like that that's been through it and they're seeing the other side of that. Yeah.
So we're giving Jeremy a shout out here. He's obviously really well respected in this community and he's done a lot of really cool things. He was investor number one. At what point did you think about bringing on investors? And were you looking for investors or did they come looking for you? Like, did Jeremy reach out to you or how did that go?
It was actually really organic. And no, I was not looking for investors. I'd done Shark Tank and I declined.
Yeah.
And really
you were profitable and growing. Right. And so you weren't desperate for cash.
No, we didn't need the money. I just wanted the network.
Yeah.
And I was very realistic in what they could and couldn't give me. And they were actually really cool. Robert's.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that wasn't like, oh man.
Oh yeah. So we didn't finish that story. You ended up not doing the deal, but it was really cool for the exposure. And was Robert's group really cool after the fact? They were like, hey, we totally get it. It's not.
They actually ended up offering me more money and less equity, which is so cool.
Yeah.
They sweetened the deal, but they were also very transparent and saying, we think that you could probably help us more than we could help you. And given their portfolio and how many people there, I remember calling people that had taken money from them and they were so shocked that I asked for that information. Like, hey, can I have numbers of people who have taken money from you? Because I want to see how this goes.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody's ever done that. And I remember calling.
You were smart to do some due diligence.
Dude, I remember calling these people and they were like, if you don't need the money, you don't do it. Like, they're not. And I also remember being like, you really thought that somebody like a Robert Herjavec is going to come in and run your deal.
Yeah.
Never going to happen.
Yeah.
If you're going to take on an investment, really understand what their role is.
Yeah.
Because you're always going to be like you're going to just be underwhelmed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I met Jeremy at an event. My brother-in-law is the head volleyball coach at BYU.
Oh, really?
So they were doing a barbecue. Traeger was hosting the team, and I went up there. I stopped by from like a wedding. I was at a wedding reception up there, Sugar House, and Jeremy and I ended up just talking. And he's such a brand guru, and actually, ignorance is bliss because I didn't even know who he was. So I was like, "What up?" Like whatever, which makes it.
You're super calm, super casual.
Yeah, no big deal. And actually Jeremy's still that way. He's so freaking baller.
He's cool, but it is funny, like at that point a lot of people would have been like a little starstruck or a little bit like fanboying or whatever, and you're just like, whatever, who are you, dude?
Yeah, like high fives, how's it going, thanks for the food.
Yeah, he probably
I
loved
didn't know
that,
and I think it's probably refreshing, but we ended up chatting forever, and he's so cool. He got my information, and I'll never forget, like 2 days later, I opened my door and there was a Traeger sitting on my doorstep.
No way.
I was like, what a freaking baller.
That's cool.
Like, just little old me, this guy's thinking about sending me a Traeger. And turns out,
not like a hat or a t-shirt.
No, dude, it's like, I was so amped.
Yeah.
So it's so funny because that seriously is how Jeremy still is.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you have time for all of this? You're so thoughtful. Like, I can say something in passing and he'll remember it.
Yeah, that's cool.
But we just were
Jeremy,
talking about,
if you want to send me a Traeger, that would be so nice.
Yeah, totally. So we were talking about brands, and he's like a brand guru, and he was showing me around, and ever since then I had just started like kind of picking his brain. And then at one point I think I offered him, like, I was like, dude, I want to give you like some sort of equity or something so I can tap you every once in a while. And he's like, I am not interested unless I can give you money. So that was kind of where the discussion led. And then
started just with the mentorship conversation.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'll do it, but if I can
smart,
invest.
Man.
Yeah. That's cool.
And I think it's important for Jeremy to have skin in the game. You know? He's So
nice.
that was the beginning. And then from that round, he brought in Kickstart, which is a local VC fund.
Yep.
And then
they're invested in us as well.
Okay. Yeah. And then talking with Jeremy, I wanted the guy from Supreme. So
and Jeremy had a relationship with him?
So he was also one of the first. It was Jeremy Kickstart and Supreme dude. So
wow.
Yeah. And
that's
then
baller. That's huge.
Yeah. It was smart. It was like, and they're still so great and supportive. And
I haven't looked on your website, but do you have like Supreme branded jumpers?
I wish. Could you imagine? How rad would that be? Cool. I know. That would be legit.
Okay. You got to lock that down.
Yeah. Some point. Right. Yep. Yeah. So.
Okay. So Kickstart was the first institutional like investor. Jeremy was the first angel. And then beyond that, have you taken more rounds of funding? Or anything?
So we did one more. It was very small rounds, both. And we did one more. And again, it was just smart money. Like that was kind of the deal.
Less about the money, way more about the connection.
So it was like just great people getting involved that knew more than me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so grew the team, shrunk the team, took some investment. You're building this brand.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how hard, as you look back, how hard has it been to take an idea and the idea even evolved, right? This was almost like, hey, I just got to sell some stuff to survive.
Yeah.
But then it became something. How hard was that? And when you look back, was it one of those things that you almost in retrospect feel blessed or lucky for the hardships?
Yeah.
Because this brand was born out of necessity.
Yeah.
This brand was born out of trial and survival.
Yep.
And that was a fire and a motivation that not a lot of people have, right?
Yeah.
Almost ironically, like the luxury of building in comfort probably isn't enough to get you there. Like you had to have the life or death kind of mindset, right?
I do. I think even still now it has to be, there's got to be, I mean, I guess it depends on the person. For myself, I needed it. It was a necessity, and it was like, I think over time, if you continue to do that, like, and you're feeling that angst and that anxiety, you're going to burn out. It's like, dude, that can't be sustainable.
Forever. Yeah.
Yeah. But figuring out like what is my motive here? And like, what's making me tick? Because if it's solely just survival and money, eventually it's like, I'm going to crash. This is not healthy. I think it takes years to, and then you'll have moments of bliss, and then maybe you're back in that deal, and then you'll have moments of bliss again.
It's a roller coaster.
It's full on a roller coaster, but I think if you got into something like this and thought it was just going to be gravy, that is, you're delusional. You have to have like some other something that's driving you, and you have to be.
Do you remember the moment where it's shifted in your mind from survival to I'm building something special?
Yeah, I think it was, oddly, I think it was, Shark Tank was a big thing, because you see the reaction and you hear, and, but I think a lot of it too was probably the first round of funding and hearing, like, understanding ignorance is such bliss, and understanding like these guys are ballers and they see a lot of deals. Yeah. And there was something special here.
They felt something about you as a founder. They saw something in the brand, and that confirmation from someone who has the experience and the wisdom that Jeremy does is like this. Okay.
Yeah.
This is real.
And getting their like buy-in, and that is when it's like, and honestly, there have been times where that's paralyzing too, because it's like, oh, I don't want to let these guys down. It's the real deal. Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that
even though Jeremy's such a cool guy, it's not like, he would hate you if it didn't work out. But he believed in you, and that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
And what I think is cool about that, we were kind of talking about this before we hit record, is that you're getting close, if not already starting to do it for the next group of founders. Now you're going to be somebody's Jeremy Andrus. You're going to be the person that sees them sees yourself in them like 10, 15 years ago and believes in them, and you have enough wisdom and experience in the space to say, I think this thing's got legs.
Right.
I think this founder's got the juice, and you're going to be that. And this cool, positive cycle grows right here in the state of Utah, and even grows beyond our borders, but like specifically within Utah and specifically with female founders. We were talking about this too. Is what I've loved about being on the podcast is the cool opportunity I've had to interview some really rad female founders, and how now there's this combination of it's more acceptable, more maybe celebrated, more whatever, to be a female founder than it was maybe even 10 years ago. There's more investor support, more investor interest, where that's been hugely lopsided in the favor of males. And I mean, still is, but I think we're making really good progress and want to keep working on that. And and now there's enough of you OGs, at least in the Utah ecosystem, that now you're starting to turn around and be able to mentor and encourage and advise the next round of like female founders. And it's a cool thing to watch.
That's like probably one of my favorite things is meeting entrepreneurs and hearing about their journey. And if I can be helpful, people were so willing to help me. You know? It's like, that's
really cool. Pay it forward kind
absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's been, I feel like I'm still brand new, but when you start talking and you start digging in, it's like, whoa, I've gone
looking at photos from 10 years ago.
Insane. There's so much there, Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about the emotional roller coaster, the emotional journey.
That's a thing.
Probably more times than you can count. You've maybe been to this point where like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. This sucks. Like, I'm sure, those down moments. How have you coped with those? Maybe beyond Jeremy and a couple of these immediate mentors, like who have you been able to surround yourself that have been like positive support?
Totally.
And how have you made it through the moments where you're like ready to throw in the towel?
I mean, there's a lot of moments like that. It's so crazy. This is like,
even now?
Oh yeah. I would be a liar.
It's so crazy, but like 10 years and everyone on the outside looks like, oh, she's got it made. And you're like, no, like even last week I was like, this sucks.
Dude, totally. Yeah. I think I would be a fool to sit here and say, I think anybody would say that they still have those moments, which is also why entrepreneurs are crazy.
Yeah.
Because
we are.
Absolutely.
My wife knows that I'm mental.
Right. Yeah. You kind of have, there's just,
somehow
it's a different breed. Me. Yeah. Good for her. Turns out there's like some fun parts about us.
There are.
They'll keep you on your toes for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if she would say that it's like 1% of the thing that's fun.
Yeah, exactly. Sucky, but, Exactly. It's tricky because when you bring on investors and you bring on advisors like that have skin in the game, it's really, you have to be also very careful not to scare them. Is that weird to say? It's like you can't be super candid because you can, but you can't. And they would even understand that. There's certain things that you absolutely should be sharing with investors and getting. But it comes back to like really what is
not so much that they lose confidence in you.
Absolutely, because then that just piles on to more shit you have to sift through. So I would say the most valuable thing for me isn't necessarily people. I think.
Did you have a person though that you could tell everything?
Yeah. My dad is like
your dad.
That guy is so great. Okay. He's an entrepreneur. There have been times where like he didn't go through a race. He sold his company, but he hasn't done what I've done.
Bootstrapped it. His own business. Okay.
So he didn't experience the amount of growth and things coming at him as fast as I did. He would always say like, Rach, and it didn't matter. It was like he understood the pressure and the stress. And I think the more I've dealt with other entrepreneurs or people, peers, it's like all people want is to not feel alone.
Yeah.
And when you're doing something like this, it is so freaking isolating sometimes because you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
On what
you tell what.
Share and you got to be able to navigate that. And so it can feel really isolating. And I've learned, like, even though people, and 90% of the time they're not going to solve your problem. A lot of the times you can like rally and get back up if you understand, well, I'm not the only one that's dealt with this or dealing with it or going through it. You know, people that have had to get rid of their team and have a pivot and reset, and they're not going to come in there and do that for you. Yeah. But to understand, oh, it's doable, and they've done it, and now look at how great that is. It keeps it very like motivating and helps you, you know, get up off the floor when you feel paralyzed. Yeah. So I think it's surrounding yourself with 2 or 3 really good, and not necessarily even entrepreneurs or whatever. It's just people. Yeah. That it's not your spouse, because obviously you have a whole other business you're running together, family and kids and whatever.
And there's I found an element, and this is like, I want this to be a huge compliment to my wife. She's super supportive, and she knows I'm crazy, and she supported all my crazy stuff.
Which is massive.
But there's still moments, because she carries a lot of stress and anxiety, and that I want to tell her stuff, but I don't want to tell her
because
stuff.
You're protecting
because I don't want her to, I don't want her to like freak out and be so stressed and worried. I don't want to worry her.
Yes.
Even though I think she'd be really supportive in those moments, it just feels like I don't want to burden her with that. And that's hard too. It's almost like that investor thing is like, what do I say? What do I not say?
It's the same type of deal, almost.
Keep buried inside. Yeah. And so the fact that you have your dad, and I feel like every entrepreneur needs a person that's has no skin in the game other than to just love you, support you, and just listen to whatever comes out of your mouth, and maybe not even give advice, but just listen and just be your person, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because you see, I mean, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, and they'll come to me now, like you were mentioning, and it's so funny because I'm not really solving anything for them other than being like, dude, I was there, and this.
I can listen with
I know exactly what that feels like. Yeah. Like exactly what you're feeling. Yeah. You know, so that is mega.
Sometimes it's all you need.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been good.
What's next? What's the total world domination plan? We have to get a Rags Supreme.
Wouldn't that be
Supreme
legit?
Rags? Yeah. We need to do some male adult jumpers.
Okay.
And we're going to get them branded with awesome logos, and then my whole team's going to wear them. What else is on the checklist of like, what's the total world domination? Yeah. What's your plan?
World domination. World domination.
Is this a 100-year brand? Or are you doing the Patagonia thing?
I mean, yeah, I think you should do that until you don't. Yeah. You know, like if things come along and they seem...
I'm sure you've had opportunities now to be purchased. Yeah. Right? You're probably getting hit up all the time. You're at that stage.
Yeah.
So right now is your mindset like, absolutely not. I'm building the, perpetual brand of Rags that's going to live forever, or... Yeah,
I think for me, it's interesting, and maybe this is such a taboo. It probably is for even an investor. They would cringe, but I think we're starting to come around to this idea of like quality of life trumps everything. Yeah. So in the current situation, obviously, like, and I guess it's because I don't question my work ethic, and like I know that I'm confident in that piece. Yeah. So
because as of right now, today, you're back in the in the driver's seat full time.
I'm enjoying it, and it's fun, and it's like there's like an energy there that I've missed. Yeah. And so for me, it's like if there's an opportunity that comes along and that like fits within this realm of like quality of life and what does that mean and what does that look like, then of course I would explore that. You know, if this means that I'm doing this forever and I maintain like the quality of life that I feel is necessary for me to be happy, we have one of these, then I would do it for 100 years, you know? And I think that that's important to like, instead of constantly being like, oh, and it's so hard not to do. And I think you do this to a level all the time. Yeah. But to kind of like really be here now and like enjoy your current situation.
It's not all about, 5 years from now it's going to be amazing. It's like, I got to
dude, because you're going to be suffering.
Yeah, I can enjoy it every day.
And then what happens in 5 years? Yeah. You keep saying that. And it's like, that has been such a huge lesson that I've learned over the last decade is in 6 more months when my life calms down, I'll do this. And it's like, no.
It's never gonna.
Never will.
It's just gonna get crazier.
It never will. And so enjoy it.
Yeah.
And like whatever that looks like. And to some people, they're motivated by, you know, being massively global and having 600 employees.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that is what makes them tick, and that's where their quality of life is, and that's great. And for some people, it's like, dude, I want to have like, this is such a facet of me, and I want to see this go and build, but I don't want to sacrifice my whole
your quality of life.
Yeah.
Like,
which I feel like it all comes full circle. If you have a good quality of life, it then is authentic, and you're breathing energy, and it's attractive, and people want to come by, and you know, so it really does pan out, works out. And so keeping that. Is
it still a great creative outlet for you? I mean, we've expanded way beyond the original jumper that was kind of the first SKU or whatever. Well, I mean, kind of the official like rags thing. I know you were doing all this, and you've expanded into different like products and stuff. Is it like, hey, I'm just going to start creating a lot more products, or
if I had
your creative juices going?
Yeah, if I had the bandwidth and resources to do a million things,
you've got the notebook full of ideas.
But I also have learned there is so important to stay disciplined and just be best at your thing. Yeah. You know, so. But yeah, like the it's never ending, and I think that's where Rags is really cool, because it's kind of schizophrenic. It's like, you can do one thing and never see it ever again. And you can bring in this other product and never, it's, you know, keep it limited, which keeps it super fun for me.
Has the jumper changed in popularity or in volume, or does it feel like it's the thing that's just never going out of style and people still love it and will maybe forever love it?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you have kids and they wore the same thing that you did, essentially. It's like, the only thing that changed was
they're
like,
way cooler than me.
Okay, but they're cooler, but it's like ideal. Everybody was in one pieces, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that it's a staple, and it's something that
mine was just the furry zip up with plastic feet.
Yours is like mine.
Like jammies, not like clothes.
Not cool, right? Not cool. But it's same concept. So I don't imagine it's not. That's what's kind of cool about Rags, is I don't think that it's not like adult fashion where now people are wearing Jenkos. You know, it's kind of like these are going to be here to stay. And then, you know, we just did an adult one and it sold out and it's on pre-order and we can't keep those in stock. And people are stoked on it, you know? So I think that's like the staple and the core, but we're always constantly iterating.
Exploring other stuff.
It's fun.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, this has been phenomenal. You have such a cool vibe. I mean, I don't want this to sound cheesy or whatever, but like, I think you do have this magic vibe about you that is attractive to people and that want to work with you, want to invest in you, want to believe in you. And I think that is something that all of the successful entrepreneurs that I've met and interviewed and worked with kind of have that. I don't know, there's something like, it was the je ne sais quoi, like the, you know, just something. And I don't speak French, so maybe I slaughtered that for all the people who actually speak French, but something along the lines of like the vibe.
Yeah.
And you have that in spades. I can see why, you know, Jeremy wanted to invest in you. And I've admired you and, you know, seen you speak and seen you kind of interact with other founders. I love the fact that you're kind of mentoring and advising and helping like this next, you know, round of founders and stuff. It's just super cool. You're super cool. This is going to be a super cool episode because you're on it. And
we're all cool. I feel so lucky to be here. You've been so great.
Work for it.
Like that wasn't on purpose, man. I know.
Well, you're good at that. Apparently, I wasn't the first one. You like made Nordstrom work for it, made Disney work for it. I'm in good company.
Oh, way. But you've been awesome. And this is so fun to be a part
it's so cool.
If I could do a podcast like this all the time, I would. It's fun.
If I could just talk to 100 Rachel Nilssons and every day, I'd just do it every day. It'd be fun.
Oh, it would be a blast.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks.